we are the generation who affected by trauma of war. Like my grandma, she went through war, and the next generation, they are traumatized. My grandma's generation were very seriously traumatized, and the second generation, my parents' generation, couldn't get proper parenting because they all traumatized. How they know how to love someone, like and the knowledge about parenting. So my parents' generation is almost directly affected by the war trauma, and my generation is the last generation who affected by that war. So they're saying when war happens, it affects 3 generations. Wow. So my generation is the last generation.
And so maybe there's a responsibility to stop it and to pass on love. Does
Yes.
psychotherapy teach us how to love or teach us?
Yes, how to love. I don't. Well, I think it sounds really weird, but my professor of psychology say that, well, psychotherapy, at the end, it all comes with love. It's all about loving yourself, loving other people properly.
Let's start with this question because we first discovered you in Mark Manson's recent video titled, "I Traveled to the Most Depressed Country in the World." Mark Manson, the guy who's famous for writing the book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. You appeared in this, and as soon as I saw you, I was like, this person looks amazing. I want to speak to this person. Like, I'm fascinated. And thankfully, you wrote this takgul saying,
yes.
I'm the person on there, and that's how I found you.
Ah.
So well done for writing that. Let's start with just any experiences from doing that video, whether you've got any feedback. And I guess the main question I'm curious to start with is, do you think Korea deserves the title, the most depressed country in the world?
Yes, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe most depressed country among OECD country. Yes, I think my country deserves that title. The suicidal rate could be the proof of that.
It's quite sad, isn't it? I mean, normally Korean people are quite proud of their country, but what is this depression or what is this suicide? What are the causes of it? Why is it like that, do you think? Can you solve the problem for us?
That is too big question, but well, I think it's 뭐라고 해야 돼? It's both sides. We are depressed, but we are 선진국 enough?
Developed nation?
Developed nation enough to diagnose as depressed. So I think it's both sides.
Because it's always fascinated me that when Korea was very poor, Korea had Tizzard dictators, that it seems people are unhappier today. Even though they become 선진국, even though they became a developed nation, now they're more unhappy.
I don't think we are more unhappy.
Okay.
We have luxury of feeling unhappiness. Before it was all about survival. We don't have any room for feeling something. But now we are settled and depressed.
Tell me about the luxury feeling of unhappiness.
Well, imagine about the war. Like all you think about is surviving every day. So you don't have time for depression. But now, after I think it's time of peace. Now we have time and thought, So I think we can be depressed
Mm.
because we don't have to think about survival.
So it's like a 양반 느낌. It's an elite theory, or it's something that, it's a luxury. That's quite interesting, isn't it?
Yes.
Are you depressed, Yunso?
I agree with her because when I have more 여유 in my mind, the depression has the room to come in. But when I'm too busy to feel stuff, I don't really feel anything. So I agree with you.
Yeah. Is there a specific Korean feeling? So Korea has its own history. Korea has its own, dictators and war. Are there things like Pulan and Han and Hwabyong? Sometimes people say that these are very special Korean feelings. Or do you think that everybody is the same?
I had no. I don't have many experience with foreigners, so I'm not in position of telling that. But 화병 is actually the term for somatization of symptoms. So I think Korean has the character of Korean doesn't used to express their emotion verbally. So they somatize their feelings. So that's why we come across the term 화병 or Han and anxiety.
Is there any reasons why Koreans would not express them? Is that just a Confucian thing? Do you think there's this like kaptil thing going on? Is it just like an Asian mentality, or I'm not sure why, but
maybe it's Asian mentality, or because we are in culture of collectivism, we don't express. We expect to be seen and read our mind. So there is phrase saying 기침만 해도 안다. When you cough, then you read other people's mind. That's the culture.
Explain that one to me. When you cough, you read other people's mind. I didn't get it yet. My nunchi isn't working. I don't understand it yet. I'm sorry.
Oh, when I cough, like when my mother-in-law cough, then the daughter-in-law should know what her feeling.
I get it. So the cough is actually a full essay in
Yeah,
instructions
yeah,
what you should
yeah.
do, but it's just that means please clean the dishes.
Yes.
I need coffee. Wow. I wonder if I'm not good at seeing depression, because when I asked you, is Korea the most depressed country in the world? Like, I don't see it much. Like, I go to all these lectures and I see lots of young people, but I don't see it. Maybe you do. You're more empathetic and tuned into it. What does it look like? What you don't know. What does depression look like? How does it manifest? How does it come out in people?
Well, it's two type of depression. It's functional depression. Functional depression means that you function well, but you suffer subjectively and deeply. And that's functional depression. So you can't see how they depressed.
Can other people see it?
No.
So how do you know it's there?
One who suffer from it knows it. And there are dysfunctional depression, which you can observe that people late and feel very, very tired, and they don't talk much, they don't reply much. Then you can assume that they have depression.
Do you, when you take the subway, when you get on the bus and things like this, do you get that feeling?
I'm not psychic.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'm curious about it, because that's why I'm curious, because it doesn't seem to me depressed, but maybe I can't see it, or I'm not tuned into it. Maybe I'm looking in the wrong places. I'm expecting rain clouds above people's head like a cartoon, but it's not like that, you're saying.
No.
Sometimes we can't see it, or it's just no messaging.
I think depressed people looks like very tired or sometimes lazy because they don't do much. And so people don't understand. because they looks fine and they do well sometimes. So people blame them for not doing enough.
That's quite an interesting thing, that sometimes very high-profile celebrities, not just in Korea, but all around the world. I'm thinking like Anthony Bourdain and Chris Cornell and like big people are doing this. So it affects like all of population, doesn't it?
Of course.
Yunso, do you see much depression around amongst your peers? You will, like, if one of your friends doesn't reply for a couple of days, how do you pick up on these ideas?
I think that many of my friends don't really want to show that they have depression, even if they have one. But they just express that they feel depressed sometimes, like temporarily. But some of my friends would be like ghosting me for they would seem like being lazy or numb, but I sometimes suspect that maybe they would be going through hard times.
What do you think are the causes of depression? Is it just like study or just life? Life is depression. I mean, are there like specific causes for young people's depression?
I'm not very proud to say this because expert is in front of me. But in my opinion, I think that being exhausted is the one of the main factor. Because when you just use up all of your energies in your work or your studies, you don't really have much energy to even recover from that. So maybe that would be the factor.
I agree with you.
Oh, thank you.
So we work ourselves too much, like the physical exertion can lead to mental effects like because Korean people work hard, or they're on this kind of gatseng mode, aren't they? You don't like gatseng?
No.
Tell us about gatseng.
Gatseng is like life of God. It means that, and you do miracle morning, and you work really, really hard.
Miracle morning?
Yes.
Tell me miracle morning.
Miracle morning is like you wake up 5 a.m. in the morning and you study English and self-improvement thing, but do that and like
do some yoga
and everything perfectly.
Now
that means gatseng, but I think in생 is enough.
Which is just normal life, not the God life.
Yeah, just life is enough.
But then there is an idea that I think we were just talking about earlier, that if you do work hard, then you don't feel depressed sometimes because you're too busy.
Yes.
You don't get to sit and think about, how do I feel? That if you're working, the depression, does it go away? Does it stay hidden?
Well, it depends. Like, you work hard and you enjoy it, you don't feel depressed. But if you are compelled to work, and be anxious about working, then you exhausted. And exhaustion can lead to depression.
Are certain people more prone to depression? So I talked about like the socio-economic status, like the economic status, but MBTIs, male, female, young, old, rich, poor, like are there certain people that are more susceptible to depression just because that's how they're born?
Yes, of course. Some people are born more susceptible to depression. For example, my mom and dad are were depressed, so I'm more vulnerable to depression. And statistically, minorities are more exposed to the risk of depression, like women and LGBTQ, poor people and old people are, more prone to depression.
If we just try to break those two things down, can you tell me about genetic depression? So you said both your parents are depressed, therefore you are maybe more likely to.
Yeah.
How does genetic depression work? So it's very unlucky. I mean, you're just born that way then. Yeah.
It's like your color of your eye or hair. It's genetic, like 50% maybe. Wow. But even if you have the gene, that doesn't mean that you got depression. You are just more riskier than who doesn't have that kind of genetics. So I think it's nurture versus nature thing. But it's 50-50.
This might be a personal question, but is your depression or any you've experienced similar to your parents, or does it come across differently? The reason I ask that is like me and my children, we sleep in the same position, like our sleeping position, like tamantedo and all these things. It's so similar. Is depression the same across generations, or does it come out differently? Or
It come out differently because our generation is very different from my parents' generation, and my parents denied they have mental issues. So they never been to any kind of hospital, even though my mother wanted to commit a suicide. So, but me, I go to hospital. I spoke openly about my disease. So I think it's very, very different.
what do you think is, I agree with you, because in my generation, men don't cry and get your feelings and push them down and suppress them and like hold it all in and 그냥 참으세요. That's what I was taught. Do you have any idea what causes this change? Is it the luxury thing again? Why is our generation?
Wow, that's an interesting question.
Is it money? Is it social? Is it Insta?
I don't know. Maybe the influence of Western society, or maybe people doesn't have any energy to suppress. We are fed up.
Just let it out.
Yes.
Do you Yoonso, do you feel similar like generation things in terms of depression or mental health with you and your parents' generation?
Personally, I think that my parents' generations kind of try to hide their feelings because they don't want to be seen as depressed or upset. But nowadays, sometimes I see people who wants to be acknowledged, to be, oh, I'm exhausted, so please take care of me, everyone, kind of stuff. I see those type of people in younger generations more, I guess.
That makes me think that maybe the evolution of psychotherapy makes people talk more. Because earlier past time, even though we talk about it, we don't have any solution. Like, I'm sad, so what? But now we have psychotherapy and every other solution. We can talk because we can get help.
Tell me, psychotherapy? Like, when I hear the word psychotherapy, I think of Sigmund Freud and cigars and laying on a couch and talking about your dreams and sex with your mum. That's what and I know that's probably very wrong. So could you just try to give us what psychotherapy is and why it's useful? So
Psychotherapy is talking therapy which involves purposeful dialogue to solve patient problem. Wow.
수고하셨습니다. 시험 잘 봤습니다. You passed the test.
So the most popular psychotherapy is cognitive behavior therapy, which try to change your cognitive thinking and behavior pattern and your emotion regulation. So it's very scientific, and many psychotherapy proved to be as effective as psychotic drugs.
Okay. I do want to talk to you about drugs and come back to the minorities and depression that you mentioned. I was looking at this research recently which said that somebody that experiences trauma and somebody that has like secondary trauma, terry trauma, their brain is affected the same way. So even if somebody went through this like really harsh emotion of war or a car accident or a divorce, something bad, but then somebody who saw it on social media, their kind of brain it works the same way. So terry trauma and normal trauma, they have the same effect on us.
Oh, really?
This is what I need to have. This is what the kind of research was saying, that nowadays we have these mobile phones where we're just kind of like traumatizing ourselves all the time. I sometimes tell my wife when she's got her phone out, be careful. Be careful what you look at, because you see so much bad stuff on a phone.
But as you mentioned about trauma, we are the generation who affected by trauma of war, like my grandma. She went through war, and the next generation, they are traumatized. My grandma's generation were very seriously traumatized. And the second generation, my parents' generation, couldn't get proper parenting because they all traumatized. How they know how to love someone, like and the knowledge about parenting. So my parents' generation is almost directly affected by the war trauma. And my generation is the last generation who affected by that war. So they're saying when war happens, it affects 3 generations. Wow. So my generation is the last generation.
And so maybe there's a responsibility to stop it and to pass on love. Does
Yes.
psychotherapy teach us how to love or teach us?
Yes, how to love. I don't. Well, I think it sounds really weird, but my professor of psychology say that, well, psychotherapy, at the end, it all comes with love. It's all about loving yourself, loving other people properly. Oh.
I'm going to get in a lot of trouble for this question, but I want to ask it anyway because it's an honest question.
Yes.
Psychotherapy and talking with a purpose to feel better. In my very outdated, old-fashioned 성차별 mind, it sounds kind of feminine.
Yes. It's feminine.
Okay.
It's feminine.
I'm not in trouble. Okay.
Oh.
Phew. But anyway, please explain this aspect of it, or why do I think that, or why do you?
It's feminine in the way it's caring, and it's more. It's really equal. There is no hierarchy in the relationship, and I don't know. It feels like feminine, and it's good.
If it helps break a cycle of trauma and it helps pass on love, then it must be good.
Yes.
Absolutely. So maybe Korea is becoming more loving.
I hope so. I hope so. It should be.
Yeah. You mentioned, so there's a genetic aspect of it. You said that minorities also face more depression.
Yes.
Could you explain why minority people are more susceptible to depression?
Why? Wow. Because they are exposed to more stress, and there is less social networks for them, and they face microaggression every day, and they are more exposed to any kind of addiction, and they don't have money, and they cannot go to therapy, or they don't have proper knowledge about therapy. So it's so natural.
Are microaggressions a thing here, like in general and in career and things like that? Because it's not a word I've heard much. For example, microaggressions and trigger warnings, and it's something I sometimes maybe wrongly associate with North America. And these. So I'm just curious whether microaggressions or trigger warnings, whether those things are like spoken about or understood in Korea, or.
I think so. We are getting used to that. Yeah.
Could you explain what they are? Microaggressions or trigger warning? Maybe. Because it's very hard. I'm not saying they're not real, but I'm just trying to understand what might be a microaggression, so maybe I can avoid it in the future or to improve my own behavior.
Microaggression is subtle kind of aggression that it sounds gentle and it sounds not aggressive, but in core of it contains the prejudice and aggression, discrimination. Like I'm saying, oh, you speak well Korean as 외국인, as foreigner, kind of thing.
But not as a Korean. Yeah. No, I okay, I understand that. It's like if you can say 안녕하세요, then it's like, oh, you speak really well. And it's like, you clearly don't. It's a microaggression. Okay. Trigger warnings?
Trigger warning is that in PTSD, there is some kind of trigger that could make PTSD post-traumatic 뭐야? PTSD.
Syndrome disorder?
Post-traumatic, which can trigger trauma.
Yeah.
That's trigger warning for someone who has that similar experience. It could trigger something in you.
I'm sorry if that was a microaggression by finishing your sentence.
No. Please finish my sentence.
Drugs. When we talk about happiness, Korea is the most depressed country in the world. That's how we started, and it generally comes towards the bottom of these, and Scandinavian countries come towards the top. Scandinavian countries also have some of the highest rates of use of antidepressants. And so sometimes I ask people, are they happy or are they high? What's the relationship here? Is it drugs? Because that's very different, I guess, from psychotherapy.
It was controversial in academic field of psychology because Scandinavia became really, really happy, and suicide rate dropped suddenly just after using drugs.
What kind of, do you know any? Is it
Prozac?
Prozac?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
So many professionals wonder it was just coincidence or really the effect of drug. We don't know yet.
Because it also could just be a placebo effect. It could be if you take this, you'll be happy, and then you think you'll be happy.
Yeah, it could be.
Are those kind of drugs widely available? I know sort of like Adderall and Ritalin, these are all very difficult in Korea. Is it Prozac and antidepressants, are they common in Korea?
Yes, common.
Okay.
Yes, I take every day.
Okay.
Yes.
What, stupid question, but how does it make you feel, or what does it change? The only reason I ask is I've had like Adderall and Ritalin, not for ADHD, but just recreationally, because some people have had them. Say, David, take this, and it's just like, wow, you don't eat, you can super concentrate, and what does it?
Antidepressant doesn't make you happy.
Okay.
It makes you feel not bad. It's like when you're depressed, you are minus in your feeling, but with antidepressant, you can feel zero.
Bringing you up to a stable level.
Yes.
Yeah. Can you, and then you get the rest of the happiness yourself?
Yes, I have to try. Work hard.
Stupid question, but what makes you happy?
What makes me happy?
Yeah.
Now? Wow. Speaking Korean makes me happy. Now I feel how valuable it was.
Yeah. Completely, and thank you. You're doing an amazing job in English. Sometimes people stand up and they do all this thing and they say sorry for my English, and then you're like, yeah, English is amazing.
Imagine my English is that amazing. How well I speak in Korean.
Yeah.
I'm so frustrated. It's like building a house with Lego.
Yes. I've been listening to your Korean for the last few days as I do the research. We'll come to it. You saw medication and drugs and things like that. Do you hear about that at university, or is it no, David? Or?
In universities, I didn't hear much about medications about depression, but in high school, they are very stressed about their studies. So some of my friends would tell me that, I had Xanax described to me, and they had told me that it doesn't really make you feel high or happy. It just makes you kind of numb to the depressed feelings, so that you can just focused on other things to make you feel better. But after this, making your feelings to this stage is your job, as you said.
So there's still responsibility in there.
Yeah.
What's really interesting to me about this is that if we had stereotypes about Korea, they would say that Koreans don't talk about mental health because it's taboo, and they don't use prescriptions and medication. But here, we learned that Korean people more and more, 점점, are talking about mental health, are using medication. So things are changing very quickly here, I think.
Yes, I can feel that. Many artists spoke about their mental issues, and there are more content about mental issue stuff. So I think it's changing very quickly.
Just before we come to your content, you just mentioned artists there. As somebody that studies this and is doing PhD, and do you have any feelings if you see like Psychotherapy and Trauma or Uyong-woo, or I'm not sure what else there is. There was the child, what's her name? 그 꿈새끼.
금쪽 같은 느낌.
Yeah. Sorry. That's what I mean. Yeah, you see my baby Korean there. Do you have any feeling when you see these kind of contents online? Does it make you feel happy? Do you go, that's not right, or?
It's mixed feeling.
Okay.
Mixed feeling because some of the facets of that content is very exaggerated. But at the end of the day, it's good to know, educate people with that kind of content. So it's good.
Yeah,
it's good.
It is good because people feel confident and they feel comfortable. I've just finished a class with 50 international students, and some of them speak very openly about their ADHD, their bipolar, they can't concentrate. And it's sometimes, to me, it feels like a little bit too open, that it's a way to manage the classroom. Or they say, I can't do that, I have ADHD. And I'm like, why don't you try? I feel like kind of gaslighting them into trying a little bit. Is there a possibility that we could be opening up too much? That we could be making ourselves a bit too weak or fragile?
Well, it's individual's choice. If they can do the work because of their mental issue, then they have to, I don't know, it's brutal to say, but it's their responsibility as well.
Yeah. What was that, doing that video like with Mark Manson? What was the reaction to that? Was it fun? Was it just work? Was it hard?
It was fun.
Yeah.
Mark Manson did a lot of work about Korean society, so it was easy to talk with. He was really gentle and very humorous. So it was easy.
Nice.
It was fun.
And the feedback, did you get like a positive reaction from that?
Yes, I got many positive reaction that my comments well reflects the Korean society, but someone says, oh, that's not true. You don't know about Korean society. I've never heard about that ever. Like, it was, well, controversial.
That's what always happens on social media.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think you were the star of the show with your final comment of the end of his video. And you are a star because from your own SNS, from your own work, we're not just talking about academic study, like you're a psychological coach, you're a content creator. Can you, maybe we explore a little bit more of who you are and what you do in the Insta realm, the SNS realm? That would be very interesting.
I am PhD candidate in coaching psychology, and also I'm author and content creator on Instagram. I'm talking about mind, psychology, relationship, and every day of my life. And I also make YouTube and Reels about psychology and my PhD life.
And it's really popular.
Yes.
Yeah. Your pen name or your name that you use is 서늘한 여름밤.
Yes.
Can you tell us about that, please?
서늘한 여름밤 means cool summer night in Korean. And I like the weather, so I pick as my fan name.
Okay. Is it quite common for people to have pen names? I feel like in Korea, writers and 작가s and they have like pen names, so they have a name rather than just using their own. Is that quite common, do you think?
I don't know, but uh, as an author who start on the internet, pen name is quite common.
Okay. Tell us about some of your work, because I've been looking at all of your Insta and your YouTube, and there's so much good stuff there. What is there for people that haven't seen it? What are they going to find when they go there?
Well, first you will find my Insta tune about my thought and feelings. It is very honest and very insight. And there is reels about my PhD life, and it's really humorous. And if you are in the course, you can relate to that immediately. And there is YouTube. It's about little lecture about psychology. So if you have any curious about self-compassion, resilience, or how to love yourself, then you will love it.
My wife says that you seem so very honest, that you're putting out there your hardships sometimes and the difficulties that you face. Even today with us, you've spoken about your own depression, your parents, your mother. I think that's a very hard thing to do, isn't it? Can you tell us about that process? Because normally SNS, we take 20 photos and we upload the best photo, only the good photo, and we put a filter on. SNS is normally about sort of looking good. Tell us about the process of showing your hardships.
Well, I think I'm researcher. As a researcher, it's important to show how my work goes and very transparently. So the other can learn from it. If I fake it, if I like put makeups on, they cannot learn from my mistake. So I try to be very honest about my life because I want to other people learn from it.
In a society of 외모 지상주의, you're doing content without makeup. That's very good. Yeah. But it must be hard to do that, isn't it? Or is it's necessary, it's just part of the work? Or
Yes.
Are you doing it because of its research, or are you doing it because that's what you want to do? Or
I want to be honest because it's more natural. And it's what life is. Life cannot be always good and glamorous. Life sometimes be really hard and shitty. But I want to relate with people. And if I want to be related, then I have to be honest. I have to be who I am.
And I think there's something in that, because when we go through hardship with somebody, or if we tell somebody our problem, we become closer friends almost.
Yes.
Not when we always have this perfect life, but when we tell somebody a problem, or they realize, oh, he's tired today, he did this, that was wrong. When we know somebody's flaws, we know them better.
Yes.
Yeah. And so it's, I guess, creating deeper connection. And Yunso, you said that some of your friends have seen the content, and even your people around you, they were like, wow, we're speaking this whole about.
Yeah, they did. And they knew about your 대학원생 contents and about your goal setting contents because many of my friends are very interested in goal setting and being anxious about their non-gat생 life. So they said that your video is so helpful, and I think so too.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Who does the work resonate with? Like when I was looking through it and looking, do you know who your audience is, or do you know, is it very varied? Is it just sort of young women, or is it men? Is it professionals? Is it university students? Your work is obviously very popular.
Yes.
And it's popular because it's honest. Is it popular with a wide range of people?
Not wide range of people. My audience is usually well-educated, 20, 30 women, and some men who are in PhD course. And that's the audience, I think. And someone who are sensible to mental issue.
I remember seeing some research that the people most likely to seek professional psychological help were young, educated women in their 20s and 30s.
Yes.
They are the people most
Yes.
likely to go and say, I need some help here. That's fascinating to me.
Yes.
Yeah. Not old women, not young, but young and educated as well. What is education? Why is the education important there, do you think?
I think education make us more open to new concept. So that's why they want to try something new, without fear of the traditional taboo.
Agreed. Yeah, that's great. What I liked about your content, because we're speaking about education, is that your work is not going deep into theories. It's not very philosophical. I don't mean that in a bad way.
Yes, I know.
But you're not talking about someone's inner shadow and all of these things. It's not Jungian, or it's not hard to understand. You're talking about day-to-day problems. Can you tell us about some of the like smartphone use and goal settings? Tell us, this is really interesting to me because it's real, it's practical. Somebody can look at this and go, that affects me, and now I have a solution, right? Can you tell us about some of maybe the problems that you've been focusing on, or some of these issues that you think are important?
Now?
Now over time,
I was thinking about the feeling of self. Well, in put easy word, I always think I could be better, or I could be amazing someday. Like when I got my PhD, when I got my 40, I could be like amazing star. But then I realized that kind of thinking makes me really anxious. Like, what if I don't get it? What if I get worse? And like, I have to work hard every day. That kind of ideal self, like imaginary ideal self, threatened real self. So I decided to trash that ideal self. And today myself is the best kind of self can ever be. So I don't have to be or another person. And that kind of thinking makes my mind peaceful.
Does it affect your future?
Well, I don't know.
Find out when you get there.
Yes.
Yeah. But I think it's very important to be, sometimes it's important to be content and happy with yourself. It's because you have to live with yourself.
Yes.
Other people, you only see them for some hours. But with yourself, you're there all the time. Tell me about relationship with the self, because I've spent a long time trying to destroy my ego. I can be quite egotistical sometimes, and as I get, I don't mean more famous, but as I get the PhD and television and radio, I really try to keep my ego down. I try to stop myself. Like, I try to be other people. Do you have any sense of like what the self is, or what we should do with ourself? I try to like avoid myself.
Interesting research about ego is invention of people. We don't, as humankind, in early days, in 신석기 시대, we don't have ego. We didn't have ego because we don't need it. But after the society of farming, we have to predict the future. Then, what means predict the future is that myself here and myself in future, that create ego. Sense of self. It was useful tool back then. But now society becomes so complicated. Ego is too become too big. Like you should be great. Like you should feel good about yourself. Like self-efficacy, everything. So it was just simple tool become really complicated sense.
So speaking of ego, do you have different ego in your different positions? I mean, you are 대학원생 in one place, and you're a content creator in one place, and you're author in one place. So do you have different egos? in doing that?
Not different ego, but different persona. Like when I work, I try to be normal, professional. But with my friend, with my family, I'm like 천둥 벌거숭이, like baby.
It's nice to be like that sometimes.
Yes.
It's nice to be out of society. Yeah. So both things there, you're saying that the ideal self is like the future self. And it's that future that creates anxiety because we're always wondering, what if I don't get there? And when we look on social media, we see somebody else, I should do that. I should be that thin. I should have that job. I should have a boyfriend, girlfriend like that. And so that takes us away from the now, takes us away from our real self. It sounds quite Buddhist. It sounds quite Buddhist to me.
Yes.
It's the idea of attachment and suffering, that we become attached to certain things.
Yes.
Is there an element to that in it? So, like a
Yes.
불교
Yes,
느낌?
it relates. But can you rephrase your question?
You said that if we have an ideal self and our real self, that the ideal self creates anxiety. And so we give up this ideal self and we just focus on the now. And the idea of ego makes us more complicated.
Yes.
To me, this story sounds like a Buddhist
Yes,
story.
but in psychotherapy, they always emphasize the importance of here and now. That you have to focus on the sensation of here and now. So I think it's related to Buddhism.
Maybe the old religions, maybe they had some wisdom in there that they were trying to teach us. And sometimes we get distracted by the robes and the songs and the temples, but the real important thing, like jihe, the wisdom in there, is what they were trying to teach us, which is that the ego and things are hard. Yeah. So one of the contents that you do is about self and ego. What other things do you find resonates?
Perfectionism, burnout, and depression, like mental issue, and positive psychology.
Can you tell me about perfectionism?
Perfectionism is
Because some
like I feel like I've become Wikipedia.
today you are. Yeah.
Perfectionism is multi-structure concept, which consists of high standard and self-blame. So, but the core piece of the perfectionism is high standard. You have to have high standard to be considered as perfectionist. But perfectionists always blame themselves because they think their core self-worth depends on other people's approval.
There's two questions I want to ask you here. The second one is about like 남의 시선 and 눈치. But the first one is about perfectionism. Sometimes Korean students will say to me, Professor, I got 93. Why? Why did... It's not enough for them. It's not enough. There's this idea that if it's not perfect, it's not good enough. Is this a generalization? Do you think some Korean people, they really like perfectionism?
Yes. I think perfectionism become a lot, not only in Korea, but become global because there is too much competition and there is less job offer. So we have to be perfect unless we starve. So we have pressure to be better and better.
Yeah. Even though we get more freedom, we have more pressure sometimes. There's a German Korean philosopher you won't like, called Han Byung-chul. Do you know Han Byung-chul?
I heard of his name.
He talks about yobaek. And we always need some yobaek and some yoyu and we need some like imperfections. That's what we need.
Yes, I agree.
Perfectionism, Yunso?
At first, I thought that perfectionists blame other people for them to be not perfect, like hindering them from being perfect. But that was my ignorance, and I didn't really know that they blame themselves for not being perfect. And seeing your contents, there are like lazy perfectionists, right? And I wanted to ask you more about that, because I think that I'm kind of a lazy perfectionist.
I'm just lazy. Sorry.
They procrastinate because if they try, they have possibility to fail. So if you don't want to fail, then you don't try. So you become lazy. But it's not lazy, actually. You just do not do it because of the fear of failure.
So what's the solution to overcome the fear of failure?
Yes. That's the point of my PhD candidate research thesis. I think self-compassion can be the solution. Self-compassion is the build good relationship with yourself. You forgive yourself and be kind to yourself, and you accept the common humanity that everyone fails. Like everyone, there's no one who's perfect, so you're just one of them.
Self-compassion, sorry.
Go on.
Yeah, self-compassion being the solution is very interesting to me, because I always thought that I have too much self-compassion, that just like, oh, it's okay, you can do it next time, or like, oh yeah, and it felt like hindering myself from growing up, because I thought that toxic motivations are better for me. But hearing that from expert makes me feel relieved.
Self-compassion is different from avoidance. Avoidance makes you stop growing. Like, don't do that. It's too difficult. It will be hard. But self-compassion is true kind of love. It motivates you. Like, you can do that. But at the same time, if you fail, that's okay too. So try freely. Whatever the results, I will support you and love you.
How does, it's a really good question, yeah. How does somebody do that though? Because it's like if you tell somebody, don't be nervous, then they become more nervous. And if you tell somebody, just love yourself, they're like, I hate myself. Are there practical steps to practice self-compassion?
Yes.
You have to like write yourself a letter, or
that could be. Okay. But I always say that before love yourself, you have to be friend with yourself. Or if you can't befriend yourself, just don't be rude to yourself.
That's really interesting.
Yes. We say all the shitty things to ourselves, even though we don't say it to others. So we are more polite to others than to be ourselves. So if you make mistake, if I make mistake, you blame me like, I'm so disappointing. You are so bad. You don't say that because you want to be polite.
Yeah.
Be polite to yourself. That's the beginning of every relationship.
It's wonderful because with people I just know in society, I'm very polite to them. With my close friends, I say some terrible things to them. You bald old fat man, what are you doing? You know, I really, and that's a very light version. With our friends, we say some terrible things to ourselves. But to people we don't know, we're very polite. And so the idea is to not be rude to ourselves first. I love this. So it's not, don't love yourself. First start with being friends to yourself. And if you can't be friends with yourself, first just don't be rude to yourself. So there's like a gradient or stepping up. Yeah. And I think one of the things that I love about this is, again, I think my mind is just on Buddhism at the moment for some reason. But it's the same as like I am you and you are me. And there's this kind of connection between people that we're not rude to other people. So we shouldn't be rude to ourselves. We treat ourselves like we treat other people.
Yes.
Wow. That's very... Can you just talk about this little bit and how does that work practically? How do you stop being rude to yourself?
I I I I told my client that imagine that your friend is exactly same situation as you. You would say the same thing that you say to yourself. If you don't say same thing to your friend, then don't say to yourself. Just say to yourself kind thing. I know it's awkward at the first time, but you will get used to it, like exercise.
It's like a reverse of the golden rule that we find in all religions. So like the golden rule is treat other people like you want to be treated.
Yes.
And we find that. But this is just reversing it. Treat yourself like you want other people to be treated. It's fantastic. It's just that maybe instead of society always looking above and beyond now to different things, now we're looking in here. And we've got to treat this the same way as we treat that. Wow.
Maybe it is related to the inner child thing, as you said in your book, because sometimes when I'm depressed or have no courage at the time, I sometimes imagine myself just holding hand with my middle school self, and then I should be like responsible for her, right? And I should say some polite things to her, like you said.
Yes.
So yeah, I also wanted to talk about the inner child thing, because sometimes in society people think inner child as a very childish or like non-grown up thing, but is it very healthy to keep up your inner child with you, or should you grow up your child inside?
It's not a matter of healthiness. I think it's natural to have some kind of inner child in us. It's not healthy or unhealthy thing. It's natural thing. Then if you want to grow your inner child, then do it. But if you want to keep it, then keep it. It's your choice.
I guess one of the more interesting things for me is that I still feel like a child. Like when you were talking about your middle school self, which is not that far away from you, you'd say, this is just a few years, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I know you said to me you feel old earlier, but even though I'm in my 40s, I still sometimes feel like a 15-year-old kid. There's no difference between that me and this me. There's lots of experiences, but it's still a child. You don't suddenly, but just because your hair gets white doesn't mean your wisdom gets white, I think is what I'm trying to say. Do you still feel like a child sometimes?
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
I think it's natural.
Yeah. I just want to come back. We come to the failures, but this idea of come to the inner child, but this idea of failure, and the lazy perfectionist. I told my students last week on the last day when I was giving them some final 좋은 말씀s and this kind of thing, like goodbyes. Seek failure. Be prepared to fail. Go out, because if you fail, it means that you're trying new things and things that you're not capable of, and you're maybe going outside your comfort area. And sometimes through failure, we learn so much and we grow. And I was trying to encourage them to fail, because I know in my life, during my 석사 and baksa and failures, I learned so much from them, from the failure. Tell us about, and now we live in a society maybe where some people are afraid of failure because they want to be perfectionist. So can you maybe tell us a little bit about the idea of failure, the importance of failure, why some people maybe are scared of failure, or how we can approach failure?
For a perfectionist, failure is not objective thing. It's fail to meet their expectation. So perfectionists can never succeed, feel the success, because even if they meet their expectation, they automatically think their expectation was too low. So they are higher up their expectation again. So for them, it's always failing. So, well, that's the feeling of failure for the perfectionist. The importance of failure is, well, I don't want to talk about it because, well, you're saying that failure teaches you a lot, but it also feels very bad.
Yeah, it does actually.
Yes.
I agree.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think the important thing is that you don't have to seek failure. It will find you. Always. Just being self-compassionate doesn't mean that you enjoy failure. Like, oh, I failed, I can grow. No.
It sucks.
It sucks.
It really
but
does.
you accept that you can feel suck. And it's okay to feel bad. Then you can move on. You don't have to learn something from it. Some failure, just failure, no lesson. You don't have to grow from it. You just enjoy it. And then live your life.
And if you do fail, just don't be rude to yourself.
No.
Because you wouldn't be rude to another person if they failed.
Yes, just being compassionate.
Yeah. How do you say don't be rude to yourself in Korean?
무례하지 마세요.
네.
Okay, that yeah, I was thinking too literally. That works. That works perfectly. 남의 시선? 눈치? Because we're focusing a lot on the self and our perception of ourselves and how we feel about expectations and success and failure. I think sometimes in Korea, maybe you can say if this is right or wrong, that the public gaze, this 남의 시선, or the view, or this 눈치, it feels quite strong. I'm not sure if it is actually stronger than other countries, or we just tell other people that, but how does that affect people's mental health and well-being? Do you have any observations? Am I using the right words? How does this thing work?
In Asian culture, it's more relationship oriented. So we are more sensitive to our other people's opinion. But as a psychologist, we think in Korea, people saying that they are affected by what other people are saying or seeing, but actually it's not other people. It's other people's mind in their mind. We never know. We never know what other people think, but we just guess, and we just imagine what other people would say to us. I think that's the difference.
So it's not a reality, but it's a constructed reality inside ourselves.
Yes.
Because a lot of the time, other people actually don't care about us. They're not. We're in bed and we're doing like this evil kid. Oh my God, I did this, and we're creating these huge stories in our head about how people perceive us and think about us. But actually, they don't care about us a lot.
No.
Most of the time, they're thinking about other things. They don't care whether we wore the right shoes or not, whether we said the right name or not. It's gone. But we do it to ourselves.
Yes.
We're our own worst enemy, I think. Yeah? So, is it a big thing here, Yunso? Do you think that there's a difference? I mean, you spent a lot of time with international students. Is nunchi in Korea different from the West? Does it feel like that? Or is it just like, nah, people are people? Or
I sometimes think that Asian people are told to have a 눈치, like reading the room, but maybe the stereotype itself makes us more aware of it, kind of. But I agree with you saying that it's just themselves' imagination, not their real thoughts. Because I have the same thing, and a lot of my friends have the thing. Yeah, they just guesses from the small coincidences. Oh, their like face expression was a little bit dark, so are they like mad at me? Did I do the wrong thing? But in reality, they're just taking care of themselves. They just have another business to do.
Yeah, very good. And I think social media comes into this.
Yeah.
How does social media work in this world? Because I'm not sure whether social media is good or bad. It's definitely good for some reasons because you can reach out, you can make connections, I can meet you, we can do this. This is a very, very cool thing. It provides some people anonymity, so they can sort of go back or they can speak about things and be anonymous and they can avoid suffering. But at the same time, I think social media and Insta and constantly seeing these photos and other people, it's very different from how we grew up.
Yes.
Very, very different.
you
Well,
watch Come on. I'm MG.
I am too. I'm 81년.
88년.
Oh, okay. 그래도 차이가 많아요. 미안합니다. Yeah. I'm in the last year of M. But I probably, if you're like me, we took a photo, but then we didn't see it for a week. We had to wait until it was developed. So what I want to ask you about, I'm sorry for that, by the way. It wasn't a microaggression. Is how does social media work with all this? Do you tell people don't use it or use it wisely? Or how do we navigate this world? Especially because you put your content on there.
I think it's interesting because what you're saying is old generation saying. Like, how do we use it? Yeah. But for us, it's not using it; it's living it. It's part of our life. Well, old generation's researcher think that social media has some kind of other world. So, like it's some mysterious thing happens there because it's so different from the real world. But research show that it's not that different from the world itself. So I think how you using it, well, that kind of thing doesn't really important.
I get it. So it's so interwoven into people's day-to-day lives that it's not an other. It's just you brush your teeth, you use social media, you do that. It's just a part of lives. Does it not have negative effects?
It has negative effect especially for younger girls. That there are research showing that when teenage girls using so much social media affect their body image and some kind of bulimia and mental issue. But well, I don't know. It just started that kind of research. So well, in my opinion, you if you are bad mood, you using social network badly.
Yes, I get it.
I agree.
If you are healthy, you use it healthy. So it's not the social media matter, but it's a matter of who we are.
That's so true because it's exactly the same as alcohol.
Oh yeah.
If you're in a bad mood and you get drunk, it's a bad idea. You will abuse the alcohol. If you're in a good mood, it kind of tastes sweet. And so it's all on our mood and things like that. I'm just curious because I have a young daughter and I'm like, I know Jonathan Haidt's research and the body image. And should I give her a mobile phone and how do I do this? And Insta, I'm thinking too much, I think.
Yeah. Just make her happy. Give her a good life experience. Then she will use it wisely.
Yeah. I agree with that. That's very nice. In your Insta content, there's a character. The way you go through these stories and the characters that you use, and I think that's one of the things that makes your work so compelling. Not because it's direct, not because you seem to come across very honest and empathetic, but also because the methods that you use. Can you perhaps, which is very different from a 박사논문 or a PhD dissertation. Can you tell us a bit about sort of that social media method, please?
I don't draw well, so I use very simple character, and I try to as less as possible to draw. So my message is very simple, very direct, and also very cute.
Yeah, for me, while reading your book and Insta-tune, it was very clear, like not very
sophisticated.
Yeah. But yeah, it was very good because some of the cartoons are very complicated. So you just have to think about things while watching it, but your content is very direct and very helpful, but not very like deep philosophical as you said. So I think that was very 경쟁력 있는.
Competitive?
Yes.
Yeah. Is it hard to do that? Is it hard to create effective content? Because it's across... I agree with you, and so by the way, yeah. Sometimes the simplest drawings are the best, right? There's that Tim Urban TED Talk where he talks about procrastination, and he's just got stickmen, and it's the best thing ever. It works so well. Is it difficult to create this content across various platforms? Because even on my way here today, I saw there was another one uploaded and I'm just curious about that sort of that process or that work balance. Do you have a team of monkeys behind you?
No. It's just one-man team.
Yeah.
And it could be hard, but for a PhD candidate who working with her thesis, it's not that hard. It's just leisure for me.
You do, as well as the content which people can find online, which is really good, and it's arranged in quite nice boxes, and people can go into different threads and things. I like that. When I was looking at it, I was going like, my content is so bad compared to this. I really felt like the ideal version here. Psychological coaching and one-on-one things like that. Could you perhaps tell us about that part of it, please, Seo-hyun?
Psychological coaching is different from psychotherapy. Psychotherapy is for a cure and make you feel better.
That was conversation with a purpose, wasn't it?
Psychological coaching is also conversation with purpose, but it's more for growth. It's like you go to doctor, it's like psychotherapy, but you go to trainer, it's more like psychological coaching. So you go to doctor because you have some kind of illness and you want to be cured. But even after you cured, it doesn't mean that you are healthy. But go to trainer, even though you don't have any illness, it's because you want to be healthy or healthier. It's like that.
I can feel already, having spent sort of an hour with you, like better. I think we've got a bit of free coaching. Yeah, don't be rude to yourself, David. You wanker. Obviously, you can't tell specific details, but what kind of people come for psychological coaching? Can you give us some idea to make it real?
PhD candidate. And many perfectionists who procrastinate their work. And who self-blame themselves. So they are my client usually.
Does it take place sort of offline, online, both? Both?
Yes.
What's the difference between...
Well, there are clients who live abroad and live outside the Seoul. So I can meet them on Zoom. And if they live in Seoul, we can meet on.
Does it happen in like an office or in a coffee shop? In an office, so it's still quite professional.
Yes.
All right. Okay. Here's a weird question. You don't have to answer this, but like, is it expensive?
It's 7만 원 at session.
Okay.
Session.
Yeah. That's kind of reasonable. 70,000 won. Give us some idea of some of the conversations or the topics of these psychological coaching. Like, so I don't know what it looks like. So you sit down with somebody, you say, I can't pass my PhD. I've got my 심사 coming up. I don't know. I'm anxious. 서밤 도와주세요. Kind of what are you going to do with that person? Because I've been there. I've felt that.
Well, I usually say it's very natural to be anxious. But what do you want to do with that? Like, what's your goal? Only if you are not anxious, what would you do differently?
Yeah. So it's about tackling that. When I was doing my PhD, there was a gentleman that I met from University of Wisconsin. He did his PhD research on Lee Seung-man. Oh, I know. His whole idea was Lee Seung-man was a secret communist. It's really weird. It's not his idea, but he told me when I was doing it, David, there are two types of PhD dissertation. 100% true. Finished ones and perfect ones. Write a finished one. I've never forgotten that, because as soon as I'd written it and published it and I'm like, Dr. I looked at it and went, that's terrible. but I just needed to finish it first. So I wasn't a lazy perfectionist. I think I got past that.
Yes, it's very healthy way of thinking. My friend told me there are two kind of thesis: finished one, unfinished one.
Do first. Friends are very similar. Yeah. Really good. Are Korean people? There was always this taboo about mental health and 상담, like this word of counseling and psychological coaching. I think there's always been that taboo in South Korea about opening up. Can you maybe tell us a little bit about that taboo? Was it real? Did people have it? And then why people are now coming to the coaching a little bit more? Or
counseling was taboo when I experienced it personally. When I was 19, I told my friend that I need therapy, and he became really serious and like, oh, do you have that kind of problem? What's wrong with you? And he was shocked, and I was shocked by his response. So, but now it's different. I feel that more people talking about going counseling and meeting psychotherapist, and I think there are a lot of difference from the generation and Seoul, not Seoul difference. 지방, Seoul 지방 difference and educational difference. More educated people, more open to psychotherapy and more socially, economically high standard person, high status person are more open to psychotherapy. So I think it's very different from where you are. Yeah,
it's hard to generalize all of Korea because if you're outside in the Shigol, it's very different if you're in Gangnam. If we see this huge change from previous generations where people were shocked if you said I need sangdam, they'd be shocked at you. What? Really? And now people might say, oh, that's good, well done. We can see it changing. Where does it go next? What's the... Do you understand? So we know the 80s and 90s and 2000s, and now we know the 2010s, 2020s. What does this look like for the next generation? When we have like the next Yunso sitting here, where are people going to be with mental health? Like
hopefully coaching.
We'll be coaching each other.
Yes.
Be nice to yourself.
But I think AI will change the scene.
Okay.
AI counseling. Counseling in Korea is expensive for many people. So there will be alternative counseling, like using AI or using some kind of scientific method.
How does AI work? I know one person, she told me that she talks to ChatGPT when she's bored. When she's in the office and she's bored, she just talks to ChatGPT. And I was like, that's really weird. Don't do that. I don't mean to gaslight, but I mean, sometimes I ask ChatGPT, define self-compassion. I might do that to it to get some things going, right? But I've never spoken to it in that way.
Why not?
Okay, well, tell me. Yeah, all right. So it can be effective?
I don't think so. Not right now. ChatGPT isn't invented for the purpose of the counseling, so it's not effective for it cannot be the alternative for psychotherapy. But if you're bored and you don't have friends, then ChatGPT can be the option.
So how will a developed AI help? Will it just be sort of a virtual sobam? Will it just be saying the same words but with whatever face you want, or gender or color or something? Or how would that work, do you imagine?
I think it's work like ChatGPT. Like I'm depressed. What should I do now? Then ChatGPT can give you some options that you can try.
Yeah, that's very interesting how that might work. How would you respond to this idea of, I know you're going to hate it, but I just want to hear your response to toxic masculinity that says, no, you should suffer, you should go through hard things, you should not talk about your feelings, let's push, let's go, 하면 돼. This kind of idea, because sometimes I feel that it's effective for me. Like during winter, like during January, there's a lot of snow. I ran about 75 kilometers outside in the snow. And when somebody asks me, like, David, how do you do that? It's snowing outside and you go out and run. I tell myself, don't be a bitch. Like, come on. You want to drink a beer? You want to eat some fried chicken? Then you've got to suffer first, and then the beer tastes really nice, and then the fried chicken tastes really nice once you've done that work. How do you respond to that idea? And I'm not suggesting that other people should do that, but
it's one kind of strategy to motivate yourself. But as far as you can endure that, like you're young and you're healthy, so you can push yourself to the edge, then you can success. But what if you become older and you're not strong enough? Then you push yourself. It's not effective strategy. So you have to switch it to the other, like compassion.
Not everybody. Some people always tell me to stop pushing myself. They say, no, calm down, David. Don't do that. And down under in Australia and New Zealand, they have this thing called tall poppy syndrome. Tall poppy syndrome is when one poppy, like a plant, when it grows really high to get to the sun, the other ones pull it down. And so sometimes people tell me, don't do that. And I'm like, why? Like, let's go. Let's get at it. And what I've found is that some people really resonate to that idea and some people don't. And so I think it's very sabasa. There's a lot of personality. And one of the things that I learned is just because it works for me doesn't mean it works for everyone else. And I need to be more empathetic to the people that it doesn't work with.
There is saying in psychotherapy, one size doesn't fit all.
Yeah. How do we become... Is there a way that I can become more conscious or aware of people that have problems? For example, I might have students. I mean, I interact with a lot of young people and people around me, family members, friends. Is there a way that I can be more aware or signs to look for? I know we spoke about it a little bit with not responding to messages, but I'm just trying to be more conscious to this. How should I be more aware of people?
Ask them. How do you feel?
It's really hard. How do you feel?
How do you feel?
Yeah,
but the most exact question to detect depression is just one simple question. I feel depressed. That's it.
Yeah. Sometimes maybe we're so busy, we're so caught up with our lives that we forget to ask people, how are you? What's going on? A lot of my students, they would say to me, especially the Indonesian students, I don't know why the Indonesian students, but they would say, Professor, at the start of every class you said, thank you for coming. And that made me feel so good. And I didn't do it to make them feel good. I said, okay, we should start. Thank you, everybody, for coming. And they were waiting for that thank you. And I didn't realize that, how it just had such a big effect. It's nice to do that. Affection. Maybe can we talk about affection and this idea of... We have this question here about affectionate people being reliable. We need to be affectionate to ourselves. How can we be affectionate to other people? We have to ask them questions, how they feel. Can we be overly affectionate? Or tell me about affection in modern world, please.
Being affectionate is like caring other people, give attention to other people, but it can be overly affectionate. We call it compassion fatigue. We being compassionate so much, so relate to other people, we can be tired. So it's all about balance. In psychology, it's healthy thing is always balanced thing. You being kind and affectionate and attentive, but at the same time you have to protect yourself. You have to know your boundaries.
Yeah. I love doing this, just asking you about words because you explain them in such a good way. You said to me, David, I'm not Wikipedia. And you're not Wikipedia because Wikipedia gives very boring answers. And it doesn't have your voice. But when you say it, even though it's a very simple thing, it's like, that makes sense. Sometimes I think it's that humanness. Is it tiring? Is it hard to hear about other people's problems a lot? Because you talked about compassion fatigue, and from what I understand from other friends that work in sort of psychology and things like that, they have to go and see a psychologist once in a while. If they're always hearing about people's 상담s and counseling, they have to go and see somebody to get it out, because they're just taking it all day, and then they need to get it out. How does that work for you? I don't mean to be sort of negative to people that come for you, but you need to manage that as well, I guess. That's a big burden.
Yes, it's important difference from psychotherapy and psychological coaching. Psychotherapy, it focuses the illness, but in psychological coaching, it focuses on the strength. So even though you have problem, we don't talk about it that much. We focus on how we can solve it with what strength. So it's very light and humorous, and I don't suffer from compassion fatigue because I believe in them.
Just bringing this maybe towards some of these last questions we have here. So, what do you think people today need to hear the most? I know there's not one size fits all, but we started this conversation saying Korean people are depressed, and you agreed with that. What message do you think people today need to hear?
It's okay. It's okay being depressed. It's okay suffer from like fear of failure. It's okay you cry. It's okay you being happy. I think it all comes to that words. It's okay. You're just human. What you're go through is so humane thing. It's not weird. You're okay.
I'm getting very emotional just hearing that. Because I could also hear it in Korea, the idea of 괜찮아. It resonates, sounds so natural in that. But what I like about it is that it's a very human thing. And I think that's getting away from the idols and the gatseng and all of this kind of sense of perfection and this alternative reality sometimes that we just see everywhere. For me, sometimes that's quite difficult because sometimes on Korean media and in dramas, I don't see bald people. I don't see fat people. I don't see myself. I see these beautiful array of perfect people. And of course, they're not perfect, but they seem perfect to us. And I wonder if that real stretch for perfectionism in the dramas, in the K-pop, in the movies, in the K-beauty, which is really good for Hallyu, and that gives people a lot of love and support, but at the same time it creates this huge gap between the reality that people here experience and that causes them a lot of that pain and suffering. It's not intended to, it's not trying to hurt people, but they feel that gap and they don't know it's okay to be human.
Yes.
My wife loved your content online, and she said, I definitely want to ask her about gangbak. Now, this is not a super debilitating thing. So gangbak is something like obsessive compulsive disorder.
Yes.
Something like that. And my wife doesn't have it very seriously, so she'd be very angry for me for saying this. But for example, if I'm turning off the car engine and the windscreen wipers aren't down, she'll say, no, you can't do that. If I turn off the car while the windscreen wipers are halfway up, she won't accept it. I need to put them down. There's this very, like in Korean, it might be gongoman. She's very meticulous. And I've always liked this idea that your disability is your superpower. So this is really good to have a wife that's very meticulous because everything's clean, the kids are always taken care of, she's not sitting around just drinking. It's actually very useful in some ways, but she definitely feels she has that. She has to go and check, are you sure you locked the door? Did you lock the door? Are you sure you locked the door? It's not super serious, but it's there a little bit. Do you have any, and she wanted to say, what should I do about my gangbak?
If you don't feel trouble with your obsession, then talk to therapist, because gangbak comes from anxiety. So why are you so anxious about it? Like, what makes you so anxious, so troubling? But if you are okay with your meticulousness, then it's okay. No, it's okay to be 꼼꼼. But if you feel like really like can't help yourself, and that kind of routine makes you uncomfortable, then go to the therapist.
Keep hearing those words. It's okay. It's okay. Yeah.
Because sometimes you have to just hear 괜찮아 or it's okay. That's just all you need sometimes.
How big an effect does our childhood have? How big an effect does our childhood have? I know earlier you mentioned sort of nature and nurture. You know, if we grow up as the second child, if we grow up as an only child, if we grow up in a house full of men or whatever, does that like sort of stay with us forever?
Some theorists say that like your order of birth affect your character, and childhood is very, very important for your whole life. But it depends on what theory you are looking for. Like for me, well, childhood matters, but what can you do? It's already been passed. So I think it's more practical to focus on now. But before that, if you are sad and still hurtful about your childhoodness, it's not on past. It is your part of presence. So don't say that it's already gone, it's already passed. Like how long, 얼마나 오래 그럴 거야, 막 that kind of thing. But it's if you are still hopeful, it's your presence. So what I'm saying, what I said about being focused on your presence means that being focused on your like feeling of your now.
Yeah. Some things it's that intergenerational trauma, some things we bring from the past and it's still unresolved. One of my pieces of work, I called it a grief case. It's like a case of grief that we bring with us, like a suitcase. I don't know if I've told this story on here before, but there was a time about maybe 2 years ago where for a day and a half, 1 day and a half, I couldn't look at anybody in the eye. And I was going to my lectures and I was sitting down for dinner and things like this. And I was just like, yeah. And I didn't know what was wrong. And after a day and a half, it just kind of passed. It was gone. But there was a day and a half where I was like, I can't look at anybody. And I don't know what caused it. I don't know what made it go away. But there was this really weird period where I was afraid to look at the world like this. And my job is to look at the world. I have like hundreds of people that I have to go and speak to, and I'm a bit of an introvert. I don't like it. But that was a very telling sign for me personally that I couldn't make eye contact. And I think what was most interesting, I don't know what caused it, and I don't know why it went away. And I only realized about like after 1 day that it was happening. I was like, there's something weird. I'm just trying to give that story in case anybody else, because that was it for me. The lack of eye contact I couldn't make. Maybe it was a feeling of shame or something.
People always think about the cause and try to understand why. But most of the time, why is not important. What is important that you feel well now. But in coaching psychology, we focus on what makes you feel better. Like how you overcome that kind of situation. Yeah, I completely agree with that. We don't need to find out the reasons why, because sometimes they're these ad hoc explanations that don't mean anything. We make up these stories. The most important thing is to feel better. Yeah. Yunso, any final questions here? Well, we have an expert. any psychological coaching you need?
I just wanted to ask you about one more thing. You also mentioned about anxious being sort of motivation to other people. And I always thought that anxious, the feeling is something that hinders someone from like cheering up. But could you please share your experience or insights for that?
Well, I make I made good relationship with my anxiousness when I realized that anxiousness is my biggest cheerleader.
Oh.
Like he or she really cares about me. My anxious make me anxious because he cares about me, like doing something bad.
Oh.
Like you don't, if you fail your exam, something bad will happen. So it tries to motivate me, but it also makes me anxious.
Yeah.
But it's when I speculate his mind very cautiously, it's out of love of myself. So now I tell my anxiousness, don't worry, I can handle that. You can rest. You worked really hard for me. Now get rest. I will do my work.
That's a very helpful way to approach.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Rest, I think, is the key idea. I think sometimes we lack a bit of rest in this modern society where we're bali. Where should people find you? Where should they go online? Do you have any recommendations? Where should they type? Where do you want them to go first?
Wherever you type 서늘한 여름밤, you will find me.
Yeah. I loved finding you today. And I just loved throwing out these words and expressions to you and getting you to explain them in a very humane and honest way. Despite having all the knowledge and the experience and the qualifications that you have, but you're able to communicate these ideas. And I think sometimes what people need is just like communication and simply talking to them. So thank you for talking to us.
Yes, thank you. And thank me for speaking English like 1 hour.
Yes.
Wow, thank you, Netflix. Thank you, YouTube, for teaching me English.
그럼 마지막은 뭐지? 마지막 문장은 한국어로 한번 해보세요.
저는 한국어를 굉장히 잘합니다. 제가 사실은 정말 더 많은 것들을 설명하고 싶었지만 더 많은 정보들은 저희 채널 서늘한 여름밤에서 확인해 주세요.
네. 그것을 다 이해했는데요. Okay, finish.
Thank you.
감사합니다. Thank you very much. That was awesome. Wow, that was great.
Thank you.
Really enjoyed that. I'm feeling a little bit emotional at times when you're talking. David, you're a man. Be strong. Don't do it. Wow, no, that's so cool. So cool.
Thank you. You 진행 very well.